Good morning and welcome to our latest Coffee With session. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Henrik Isaksen, the CEO of SIXT Denmark, one could say a true veteran and visionary in the mobility sector here in Denmark. Henrik brings over 35 years of experience, having held international roles at Mercedes Leasing Europe and GE Capital, and founded numerous companies that have shaped Danish mobility, from AutoLease and Clever to GreenMobility and, of course, SIXT Denmark, which he has led for more than 2 decades. SIXT, founded in 1912 and still family-owned, is now the world's best valued car rental company, present in over 105 countries. In Denmark, the company operates a broad network, offering flexible solutions for private and business customers alike. Today, we'll talk about how the Danish mobility landscape is evolving, what role SIXT plays in shaping it, and how sustainability and customer needs are converging in this transformation. Henrik, good morning, and it's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Henrik's story reflects the transformation of mobility itself, from combustion engines to electric fleets, from ownership to access, and your leadership, Henrik, spans both corporate structures and entrepreneurial innovation. That makes you the ideal guest to help us look at where Danish mobility stands today and where it's heading towards the future.
Thank you.
So my first question would be, Henrik, starting with the state and the future of Danish mobility. The big picture, based on your long-standing experience, how would you describe the current state of passenger transport in Denmark? And how do you see it evolving for people in cities, in rural areas, and for international travelers coming into Denmark?
It's a big question here. I think you need to look at the mobility in overall, that we have what we call urban mobility, which is mobility which is happening in Copenhagen, Aarhus, Odense, Aalborg, and so on. When we look at Denmark, and then we have on the countryside, there's a huge gap between those two.
Yeah.
When we look at the mobility in urban or larger cities, I think we are well established in what we call public transportation, in a combination with example car sharing, bike sharing, and individual ownership of cars. But we come on the countryside, we see a larger lack of good quality on public transportation. And that means that mostly, or more or less, everyone who is living on the countryside need to have their own car.
Yeah.
And that is, the way we see it is 2 different ways. When we look at the urban, we see a combination of public transportation and car sharing.
Mm-hmm.
We also see that there are around 50% of people who are living in larger cities today have their own cars. That number have been stable for the last 40 years.
All right.
Of course, there are more people moving in, and of course that will give more cars on the streets, and that is one of the big issues which we have in larger cities. There are simply too many cars. That's why car sharing is coming up, metron, the different buses and trains is more, they're building on that all the time. On countryside, it seems like it's been standing still for many years, and it's been decreasing in public transportation. Okay. And that is an issue for people who are living on smaller villages around the larger cities in Denmark. I know that they are working or the government is working on different solutions. I'm myself working on a project called rethink, which is a combination of car sharing, bike sharing, driving together, mobility on demand, and public transportation, and find different locations on the countryside where those points can be, where people can take more different mobility solutions or choose more different mobility solutions instead of having their own cars.
Yeah. And what has changed in recent years if we look at topics like flexibility and access to mobility? Mm-hmm. I mean, we are still in a car-dominated country in a way, specifically in rural areas, similar to Germany, one could say, despite the fact that Denmark is very well being seen as a bike-friendly and a biking country. But mobility, access, flexibility of transportation, is this evolving over the years, bringing the urban areas and the rural areas together?
Yeah, it's. I think one of the larger changes we will see in the next couple of years is people will choose a more flexible mobility solutions than we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
When I was 18 years old, I got my car. There was no doubt about that.
Yeah.
The day after I turned 18, I was out at least driving my dad's car or buying a car.
Yeah.
And that had been going on for many, many years. But in the last 10 years, we have seen that it has been postponed when the younger generation is getting their own car or the first car.
Yeah.
And we see that a little bit increasing for the moment, where people, not only younger, but also established family gonna say, and companies are gonna say, we don't need the car as often as we have done in the past. We need to have a more flexible access to use a car. And that's where SIXT and GreenMobility is having a very good spot in the market. We see a bunch of companies saying we need a flexible fleet. They have, let's say, 100 cars in the fleet. 20 of them is maybe not in use every day. Yeah. So we're seeing companies reaching out to SIXT asking for, can we get, out of our 100 cars, can we get a contract where we can have access to around 20 cars on a more flexible way? Yeah. And we will probably see that increase in the next years or in the years to come. We will see that before we're going to see the robot-driven car and all those things. So and also the flexible fleet or flexible ownership or flexible access to mobility solution is also very interesting when we have a situation as the world are in the moment where cash is a good thing to have, and instead of investing in cars, they're going to have a more binding money into a long leasing contract. They're going to have shorter what we call mini lease contracts with 3, 6, 9 months binding period. And we see that a lot for the moment. That of course have some is linked up to the situation, the financial situation in the world for the moment.
Yeah, interesting point. And indeed, this is about efficiency, allocation of resources, the financial situation of both private households and companies.
Absolutely.
And indeed, it doesn't make sense to have 20 cars standing around idle. But the next point I would like to discuss with you, and I think this is also a very significant topic, is the climate footprint of the mobility sector, which obviously also plays a huge role in this regard. And how do you at SIXT Denmark address environmental responsibility? I know you have an ambition to change your fleet to all electrical by 2030. Okay. You are also working with car sharing and mobility solution different than car ownership. From the whole debate of the climate footprint, the electrification, what is your take on this?
Yeah, we in SIXT Denmark we have a lot of focus on the whole green agenda in relation to mobility. We were founder of Clever. 14 years ago we were founder of GreenMobility. We are now working on a Rejsepunkt project. And we now have set a goal here for half a year ago that in 2030 we will change to, the whole fleet will be changed to electric vehicle. Or we will have cars which do not have any environmental impact, negative impact. And why I'm saying that is that we will have an issue on the larger trucks and vans where we could be a little bit concerned that the electricity model is not really in place. We do also see, and we're also working on different projects which are related to gasoline, which do not have any CO2 or NOx impacts. We see that from the French manufacturers that Total that they're working on an interesting project for us. And that will have an impact on how we see the future with electric vehicles, no doubt about that, but it will absolutely be the best solution for vans.
And now in Denmark we're already in a quite comfortable situation when it comes to electrical mobility with passenger cars compared to Germany.
Yeah.
Maybe not as advanced as Norway is, for instance. But what opportunities and challenges do you still see on the road to electrification in a country like Denmark?
Yeah, I think we have a bunch of challenge in relation to electric vehicles. If all of us suddenly going to change to electric vehicles, our power system is absolutely not big enough to manage that. And everyone knows that. So it will be regulated by tax or something like that. That is something which we can do in Denmark. The biggest problem we have in those days and the next couple of years is that we don't really know what the prices will be on an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
You can buy a nice Tesla today and you will lose 200,000 tomorrow. That do not motivate you to change to electric vehicles. That is more or less the same with all electric vehicles for the moment.
Yeah.
The prices is simply, we can't see how we're going to end.
And European manufacturers are very much under pressure from Chinese competition coming in relatively strongly or trying to get in relatively strongly.
Yeah, they sure do. But now we're sitting here with you. I just have to say that the German manufacturers is coming very, very fast. Mm-hmm. And they're doing a very, very good product for the moment, also comparing to one of the best Chinese manufacturers. We still have to understand that the whole environmental impact on a vehicle start the day is going to be produced in a factory somewhere. It will be transported on a ship and end up in somewhere in Europe, going to be put on a train and end up in Denmark. The whole impact on the environment on that car is high. You can buy a diesel car in Wolfsburg and you can drive 7 years in that one before it'll have this. You have the same impact as the Chinese electric vehicles. All that is nice, but we will see that the market situation of electric vehicles will stabilize or have to stabilize in the next year, where we'll have a price level and we have what we call an index. That means that we can buy a new car and we can sell it after 6-12 months to an indexed way price. Yeah. We do that today with gasoline. We don't have any diesel cars more in our fleet, only vans. But we have that on gasoline cars, and so we know exactly what the total cost of ownership of a car is. And I know a bunch of companies is very concerned about acquiring or leasing electric vehicles because the TCO, or the total cost of ownership, is not budget safe. And that can be a problem if we don't stabilize it in the years to come.
Yeah. Indeed, that's a very good and interesting point. In Germany, when we talk about the electrification of passenger cars, we often have a debate about the range fear. Because obviously people are used to drive with their diesel for more than 1,000 kilometers, and now it depends on which electric vehicle you have. The range is rather limited. Nevertheless, there's a lot of development happening over the last few months specifically. What is your experience at SIXT Denmark with customers? Is that a topic? Are there still people who rather prefer to have a combustion engine vehicle? Is range fear still a topic? Or in a country like Denmark, with a very well-established charging network, you mentioned Clever, and you were among the creators of Clever. Is this still a topic in Denmark?
I think so. When we meet customers, when we have customers coming in international from abroad, a German customer landing out in Copenhagen airport, who's not used to driving electric vehicles, he will not choose an electric vehicle. He will choose a gasoline car, which of course will make sense. A new city, a new country, and now you have to work with a new fuel system. It doesn't really work. A lot of Danes, when they rent a car in Copenhagen or in Aarhus, they normally drive for a long distance. And they are still concerned about the range of the electric vehicles. When we have what we call our mini-lease fleet, we have a bunch of electric vehicles in our mini-lease fleet, and people don't think about that. So it's about to get used to it. I've been driving an electric vehicle for the last 12 years. I don't even think about it anymore. It's just, I think about the same way as I did with, I need to find a gasoline station and put on. What we see a lot in the family or in the company's mobility combination models is that they have an X amount of gasoline and X amount of electric vehicles, and then they find the way, they change cars and so on.
Yeah.
So they can find the right solution. What we really see in SIXT for the moment is that we see a lot of companies asking for an electric vehicles to give it to the employees for them to test for 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, simply to figure out if that type of job or that person in the organization could fit into an electric vehicles. And that is a very good test because people drive differently.
Yeah.
And
it's about behavior.
But mostly when I look at my driving behavior, I can't remember last time I was driving more than 250 kilometers. We also have to be careful that we ain't gonna do range, give them a bigger blame than necessary.
And actually, the story is,
I think most of the people in Denmark with 500 kilometers, that works fine.
Yeah, the rest is psychology.
The rest is more like we buy a station car because we're going on ski one time every year and so on. But it's of course there are some people which is driving from Copenhagen to Skagen every second day, and it doesn't work with an electric vehicle. But we know around 50% of all cars in Denmark have a more or less fixed driving behavior, driving from one location to another, the same more or less every day. That means that 50% of the whole fleet in Denmark could change to electric vehicle with the technology which we have today. Yeah. And then we can talk about how do the technology look like. We will probably expect the level of around 500 to 600 kilometers on a battery. What we will see is that the battery will be lighter and they'll be cheaper. Yeah. And the impact on a car on an electric vehicle is that the battery price is still the highest thing on the car, and if we need to get the prices on the cars down, then they have to work on get the batteries cheaper. They are way too heavy. That means they have a big impact on the tires, and they have an impact on the roads, and they need to put down the weight. So the battery manufacturers are working on those two issues, make them cheaper, and make the cars much
interesting point.
Put the weight down.
And last point about technology. The hybrid technology in this respect was and is just a bridge technology, or do we still see customers going into hybrid
plug-in hybrids? I think it's a very good solution. We have now cars which are 5 or 6 years old. The quality is still good. It is for people who have a different driving behavior, where the plug-in hybrid is good. Yeah. But from the cost, it's simply too much. It doesn't make sense to have two types of motors in the same vehicle. So from a technical standpoint and how it's gonna fulfill our demands for mobility on an individual basis is fine. From a technical resources use, it's a disaster. So I don't think we will see them in the future. Maybe on vans and large trucks, I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Before we come to our next point, a brief reminder for our audience that obviously you can type in your questions in your chat, and we will try to answer them and come back to you on your thoughts and on your questions that you might have. Henrik, coming back to a point we only briefly touched that I'd like to discuss further with you is changing customer and mobility needs, because this is very much the driver of the different kind of setups we are seeing in mobility. So you've served private customers, you've served corporate customers over the last decades through rentals and car sales. How have you seen customer expectations and mobility habits shift? And how do you think this will continue to evolve? We briefly touched upon it, the difference between urban and rural areas, but maybe also painting a picture towards the future. Where do we see mobility needs evolving?
I think we will see the demand for mobility solution will increase. I think the ownership will decrease, of a car will decrease. I see the access to a mobility solution like a subscription or something like that will increase. We see the modern urban population, people who are living in the city of Copenhagen, they are getting less and less cars by themselves, and we will probably see that increasing in the years to come, and have access to solutions like GreenMobility and rent a car when they're going for a weekend. They have access to those. That flexibility is not only from a economic standpoint, but it's also for it's so much easier. It's complicated to have a ownership of a car if you live in Copenhagen. Parking, service, parking tickets, whatever, damages and so on. So people are gonna get rid of them. I have 2 kids who are living here in Copenhagen. None of them is they've been growing up with nice cars. They don't need a car today. They're simply having access to GreenMobility, and they're renting a SIXT car when they need to drive longer. And we will probably see that from the younger generation. We see younger people getting the driver license later and later.
That's right, yeah.
And we see that that their first car, they're getting that later and later. In Berlin, as an example, there was a test in 2017, where that must have been 2007, there was around 30% of people below 30 years who were buying their first car before they were 30. Mm-hmm. Today in Berlin in 2017, there was around 3% of people below 30 which were buying the new cars, simply because there were so many car sharing solutions in Berlin at that time. Yeah. Now GreenMobility have around 1,400 cars here in Copenhagen, and we can see that every day we are getting more and more people in to use it. We see the public transportation is getting better and better, and the combination of sharing a car or a bike into the public transportation, I think that is the way we will see we're gonna act in larger cities. On the countryside, it's a little bit more complicated, and it's a little bit more expensive, and I don't think that anyone yet have come up with the right cheap solution for that.
Yeah, because that would actually be my next question. Even if we think about Copenhagen, which is indeed supported by an excellent network of public transport, which is very bicycle friendly, etc. The inner city population is one topic, but then linking the peri-urban areas, speaking about Roskilde, Køge, coming from all these areas, driving into Copenhagen to work and so forth. Yeah. This is a bit more complicated. How do we best link mobility, individual mobility with public transport in this respect? You mentioned Reisepunkt, for instance. There's other deliberations in that respect.
I think we will see much more a combination of where you can take your bike with you on a train and a bus and so on, more bike-friendly solutions in the public sector. We will also see larger, if we look a little bit ahead of time, we will see larger parking houses where you arrive with, parking house, Reisepunkt locations, where you arrive with the public transportation. There are different ways to get to the last mile. We will see that I don't think that it's interesting for Copenhagen Kommune to decrease the access for people driving around. Maybe they're talking a lot about cutting all the parking places, but there are still parking places available in the parking houses, and we will see larger parking houses be built on the inner circle into Copenhagen, where you change to something more public to get to the final destination in downtown Copenhagen. We will see, we can go a little bit further, we will see self-driven cars in the next 5 to 7 years. We will see them, robot-driven taxis, which will go out for those Reisepunkts and take you to the final destination. You will have a subscription where you can order your robot-driven
So the Reisepunkt would basically be a hub for me to get into a kind of individual transport, which is semi-individual, so to say.
Exactly. But we need to collect data, and that's what we're doing for the moment, because it's a very much data-driven setup. But we will also see, I'm not sure how many years it will take, but we will also see flying cars on a shorter distance. We will see what we call hotspots, where you take your GreenMobility car. It's a self-driven car, and they will pick you up here in the office. And you have to visit me somewhere, and you will be asked, you want to take the fastest or the cheapest way, and you are late, so you will take the fastest way, and you will see the self-driven cars go to a hotspot where the battery and the wheels and the motor will be clicked off, and a drone will take you to the next hotspot, put you on a new set of wheels, and drive you to the final destinations.
But that actually means that in a context like here in Copenhagen, Denmark, metropolitan areas, the concept of owning a car is soon becoming outdated.
We will probably see in the next 5 to 10 years that owning a car will decrease dramatically, because there will be so much restriction of having a cars in a city like Copenhagen.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, if you look at the big picture, I think it's very important, and the flexibility which companies and private individuals have, is that they will have access to a mobility solution, whatever that is. A light little car, a large car, convertible, a four-wheel drive, a train, a bus, a bike, a scooter, whatever. That we need to give. We don't need to stop the individual mobility demand. We more have to motivate them to get people around, but we need to do something in relation to number of vehicles which are in a city like Copenhagen. Driving during the day in Copenhagen over the last 10 years is a disaster now. It's way too many cars, and they need to do something. And that's why people are gonna get away from the individual and more to the public, but still need to have access to a car solution. And that could be a car sharing, bike sharing, rent a car, or whatever fit into their demand.
And that would be my last question. Where do you see SIXT Denmark positioning itself in that vision of the future of mobility?
We will have a combination of flexible fleet available for our commercial customers. We will have an individual solution for our private customers. We will have a solution where we deliver the car to your door. Mm-hmm. You simply book your car and we'll deliver it in the next couple of hours. So access, we think access is important. We will see our position as handling the very good customers which are coming international, to make sure that they can come around and see more than just Copenhagen, but see whole Denmark, rent a car in the airport, or in Billund, or in Copenhagen, or in Aalborg, wherever we have in airports. So we believe that we have an innovative view into how we're going to develop the mobility for the future, and we will absolutely be a part of that. We will do whatever it takes to make sure the customers will be moved around.
Yeah, so access to mobility and flexibility of mobility will be super important and will remain a super important topic. Henrik, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here today and being our guest and sharing your insights with us on the future of mobility and the role SIXT Denmark plays in that context. Today's conversation has highlighted how dynamic, complex and full of opportunity the space of mobility truly is, and I think not only SIXT Denmark, but you yourself as an entrepreneur, you will continue to play a large role in that respect here in Denmark. I'm also delighted to invite you to our next Coffee with session on May the 22nd, again 8:30, where we'll welcome then Andreas Fuchs, the CEO from Robert C. Spies, which is a renowned German real estate consultancy with a growing presence in the Nordics. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we look forward to welcoming you back soon for our Coffee with. Have a great day still. Thank you.